Some experiences defy the realm of scientific explanation. They linger in the shadows of our minds, haunting us with questions that have no answers, and leaving us stranded between the realms of truth and imagination. It's these encounters that etch themselves into the fabric of our existence, altering the course of our lives in ways we can scarcely comprehend. This incident took place in Arizona back in 2016 when I was 16 years old. I was preparing for my high school exams and used to stay for classes until late. Once I got very late and left the class around 3:30 p.m. There were two routes that led to my house. One was a longer route that took about 45 minutes, and the other was a shortcut, but it got deserted during noon hours. As I was already late and hungry, I decided to take the shortcut. On that route, I had to cross a railroad track and then walk around 1 kilometer to reach my house, passing by a deserted hospital on the way. The weather was pleasant that day, and I was in a good mood as I plugged in my earphones and started walking. Everything was normal until I reached near that hospital. When I reached there, suddenly the wind turned cold, and it was strange because in Arizona, we usually experience varying weather conditions, especially during the summer months when it tends to be warmer. However, this sudden change in wind and temperature caught me off guard, as it seemed to defy the typical weather patterns of the city. However, I kept walking when I felt like someone was walking behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. I continued to walk when I saw in the distance there was a woman in a dress that seemed like my neighbor. I was relieved, thinking that now I don't have to walk alone on that creepy road. I shouted, calling her name, but there was no response, so I started to walk faster towards her. However, I couldn't get closer to her. I started to run towards her, still calling her name, but somehow the distance between us remained unchanged. I couldn't understand what was happening, so I stopped and tried to figure out what was actually going on. I kept looking at her, and in a fraction of seconds she disappeared into thin air. That road was all straight for at least 1 kilometer, and there was no place to hide. That was enough. I lost control of myself and started running like a dog, only stopping when I reached home. I was so scared that I got a fever that lasted for a week. The next day, I told everything to my family, but they didn't believe me and shrugged it off, saying I should take a break from studies and that I was imagining things. But weird things started to happen. I used to feel like someone was caressing my hair when I was sleeping. I was afraid to be in the dark, and I remember seeing a silhouette in my room whenever I was alone. But this time, I didn't tell these things to my family. However, one day, my cousin, with whom I shared my room, came running out of the room screaming. We were all in the living room watching TV. When she was asked what happened, she said that after taking a shower, when she entered the room, she saw me sitting near the window, looking outside. She opened the cabinet and was searching for something. When she tried to ask me whether I saw what she was searching for, getting no reply from me, she looked towards the window and found no one there. I was still in the living room with everyone watching TV. After listening to her, I expressed what I had been dealing with for a week. Now the family believed that something was indeed fishy, and took me to a holy place. There we met with a priest who solves these kinds of cases. He recited some verses of the Bible over me and told my elders to never let me be alone in that house and strictly told me not to go by that road ever again. He didn't tell me the reason, as he felt it's not necessary for me to know that. However, things didn't happen like that again, and we even left that house after 3 to 4 months. My name is David. I work as a graphic designer for a large corporation. It was just past midnight when I finally shut down my computer. Working late had become my norm, but that project was a beast with a deadline breathing down my neck. The office was dead quiet, save for the occasional groan of the building settling into the night. I packed up, flicking off the lights, leaving the floor in darkness. The drive home was a lonely one, just me, my car, and miles of empty road bordered by forests whispering secrets in the wind. The towering trees on either side of the road seemed to lean in as if to share their ancient stories, their leaves rustling like pages in an unread book. I was looking forward to the comforting silence of my home until a flicker of movement caught my peripheral vision. Just a deer, I thought, until it happened again. Closer this time, and unmistakably not a deer. The silhouette was human-like, shrouded in a tattered cloak that fluttered in the breeze. It stood motionless, an eerie sentinel at the roadside. A chill traced my spine when my headlights illuminated the figure, trying to dispel the unease creeping over me. I drove on, the night deepening around me, the road stretching like a black river through the wilderness. Then the radio crackled to life. Static at first, then a song from another time, a soft, haunting melody that seemed to know me, know my thoughts. My hands tightened on the wheel, my knuckles turning white. Radios don't just turn on by themselves. I reached to turn it off, but as my fingers brushed the dial, the music stopped abruptly, leaving behind a lingering sense of disquiet. My heart now a drum in my chest, I tried to shake off the strange occurrences. But the silence was worse, because then I heard the whispers. They were faint, like distant echoes in the recesses of my mind, calling my name and beckoning me to look into the rearview mirror where shadows danced in the back seat. Fear gripped me, and I resisted the urge to turn and face whatever lurked behind me. When I finally dared to glance, there was a moment, just a single heartbeat, where I saw eyes bright, unblinking eyes staring back at me. Panic surged through my veins, and I swerved, adrenaline sobering my tired brain. When I looked again, there was nothing but my own pale face, etched with fear, reflecting in the mirror. The rest of the drive was a blur of terror, each creak and sigh of my car a conversation between me and the unseen. When I arrived home, I was greeted by the empty darkness of my house, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave me. I never took that road again at night, preferring the longer route through town, with its welcoming lights and signs of life. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear that haunting tune playing in the distance, and a whisper that could almost be my name, a reminder of that eerie night that still lingers in my memory. I'll never forget that night, the night we encountered something beyond explanation on that lonely road near Cedarwood, Oregon. It all started innocently enough, with a group of us college friends craving a late-night snack and adventure. We often frequented the midnight diner, tucked away on the outskirts of town, especially when our hunger pangs struck in the wee hours. With a stash of weed procured by my friend Jake, we set out on foot along the dimly lit road, our laughter echoing in the stillness of the night. The journey felt surreal, almost dreamlike, as if we were walking through a haze of smoke and moonlight. After indulging in a feast at the diner, we began our journey back to campus, the glow of the full moon casting an eerie light on the deserted road. As we passed by the old Cedarwood church, a sense of unease settled over us, amplified by the stories we shared of ghostly encounters and supernatural phenomena. Suddenly, ahead on the road, a strange mist began to gather, illuminated by the flicker of a matchstick suspended in midair. My heart raced as 2 cigarettes materialized out of the mist, their glowing tips casting an otherworldly glow in the darkness. Without a word spoken, we continued forward, our eyes fixed on the spectral figures before us. The air was thick with the scent of tobacco as we cautiously passed by, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we drew closer, one of the cigarettes drifted to the edge of the road, while the other remained stationary, its ember burning brightly against the night sky. With a sense of dread, we hurried past the spot, eager to escape the eerie presence that lingered in the night air. But our ordeal was far from over. As we rounded a bend in the road, we were met with a chilling sight, a figure seated at the roadside, its head engulfed in a cloud of smoke. My breath caught in my throat as we passed by the mysterious figure, our minds reeling from the encounter. Back at campus, we huddled together in our dorm room, shaken by the events of the night. Despite our disbelief, we knew that what we had witnessed was real, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lurked in the darkness of Cedarwood Forest. And as I drifted off to sleep, the echoes of our encounter continued to haunt me, a ghostly reminder of the night I would never forget. I was in high school. I lived in a town called Stormville, New York. The region had been something of a hotbed of Revolutionary War activity, and throughout the several towns in the area were numerous signs commemorating battles and long marches, tombstones predating our country, caves that had been hideouts in earlier times, and other oddities that hinted at the age of the place. I was told a story by a friend of a forest nearby between two houses, several hundred yards across, that extended several hundred from the road that it bordered. I was told it had been the site of a battle with many lives lost. Not much more, but enough to make me glance whenever I drove past it. I was told you could hear voices. I, being a skeptical human being and a teenager with little else to do at the time, was intrigued enough to prod. Every so often when I drove by at night, I would roll down the windows and stop if there were no other cars on the road. Nothing. Of course. Hearing nothing, though, didn't mean I wouldn't peer into the woods whenever I passed. During the daytime, I learned that the woods were quite deep. I could never make out an end to them. I learned that they were fairly thick, rocky, and almost permanently covered with a bed of leaves. I thought, on a few drives by, that I could make out the heads of several tombstones, but those never interested me enough to stop and check, nor was it ever in my nature to be more than an outside observer. I always looked from the road, from my car. One night, though, sometime in August or July, I was walking from a friend's house back to mine. It was about 11 o'clock in a wooded area on a cloudy, humid night. It was dark. I decided that a detour that took me by the woods would be worth my time and headed off in that direction. I approached the edge of the woods and could swear something just felt different that night. There wasn't a hint of wind, but I felt I could detect a faint, continuous sound in the distance. It wasn't the sort of sound you can listen to, just the kind you can only hear when you're not paying attention. It was that sort of deal where the hair on your forearms stands up and you get chills. The whole scenario had my curiosity, enough to stand there for a while trying to see if I could see anything, which I couldn't. But when you're curious about something, you don't really leave it alone if it's right in front of you. You poke at it with a stick and see what happens, right? I reached into my pocket and found my stick. A coin. Felt like a quarter. Without a second thought, I threw it into the woods as far as I could. Nothing. Didn't even hear it land. As I'm reaching back to grab another, though, clink, 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 the quarter strikes the pavement right next to me. So I ran.